G'day hikers, and welcome to Hike the Highlands Festival YouTube channel. My name is Tom Wilson and I will be your host today. We have a great topic today on hiking and it's about the Camino de Santiago. And I have a special guest who I met back in 2012 at the one of the first Cape Breton Highlands 3 Peaks Challenge, where you have to hike 3 mountains in one day. Kim is one of the 10, she was born and brought up in rural PEI and one of the 10 children in the family. And she is an accomplished hiker who has hiked in UK and long distance hikes, as well as in North America. And she's a well-known marathon runner who's competed in over 60 world marathons, including 8 of the Boston Marathon. So welcome, Kim.
Thank you.
Okay, so you have to tell me a little bit about when you want to start the slide. So do you want to just say next?
Okay, next.
Okay.
Okay, on this slide, you see a 50-liter backpack that I started with. I was on a 3.5-month journey across Europe, therefore the size of the backpack. I wouldn't recommend that for the Camino because it was extremely heavy. I would recommend a 45-liter backpack. The bigger the backpack, the more you're going to stuff it. So go with a 40 or 45-liter backpack. It has the Canada flag on it that everybody recognizes, and certainly was a bit of a conversation piece when I first stepped out on the Camino. So this is Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port. It is the Camino Francis starting point. Beautiful little village. And at this village, you can get your passport. And a passport is basically just that. You carry it from town to town and you can get stamps to verify that you've been in those towns. And the end result is you come back with an accordion type of passport with stamps from all across the 780 kilometers that you would have trekked.
Oh, nice.
Just some of the beautiful landscape that you will see. This is typical in the Pyrenees Mountains. It's a mountain range in France that you cross into the Basque region of Spain. Lots of sheep with beautiful bells. It was like a traffic hour, sometimes difficult to get past the sheep. There were so many, but very idyllic and magical. Just a lazy cow, a happy cow, 3 of them.
Now he has horns, so I take it, is that a bull?
That's a bull, that's right. I have a little screen here and you're right, it's a bull.
Okay.
Just along the Camino Trail, you'll see all kinds of crosses like this, and people will carry little rocks with them in memory of somebody or a wish that they want to, be heard, and they will place the rocks on the established crosses. So this is a very common sight along the trail. Next. Okay, this is a marker that is very common. It is the Scallop Shell. And the reason that the Scallop Shell is infamous with the Camino is that the patron saint of the pilgrimage, St. James, was beheaded because he was spreading the gospel of Jesus. He was one of Jesus' followers, and he was spreading the gospel of Jesus. And when he returned back to Judea by pilgrimage, he was beheaded. So the Scallop Shell then became the recognized symbol of all pilgrims on the Camino, as it's found on the shores of Galicia. And that's where the Camino ends. Next. Okay, just an example of one of the many ornate churches along the way. And the interesting thing to note is that the first half of the Camino, the churches were open and there were many Latin masses and many monks chanting. The second half of the Camino, for whatever reason, was more closed up and a bit of a disappointment to many people. That said, there were still a number of churches open, but not as many and as often located as the first part of the Camino.
Okay.
This is again the sign of the pilgrim. That's what people who trek the Camino call themselves, pilgrim. And when you see another pilgrim, you say buen camino, or a good way, you're on your way. So this is just one of the many symbols. And in the background, you see the beautiful landscape, countryside. Once again, a very ornate church, very rich. And in fact, this is probably one of the more modest ones. Next.
Uh-oh.
This is a blister, and this is not my foot. This is the foot of a good, what turned out to be a good friend of mine who I met the first day I started out on the Camino in Saint Jean Pied de Port. It's an Irish man by the name of Gerard Ryan, and this is probably 5 days into his Camino. He was only doing about 100 kilometers. And this is a kind of a message to have proper socks, to change them when your feet start having a hot spot. Change your sock. If your foot gets a little bit damp from sweat, change your socks, carry a little bit of talcum powder with you, and really make sure that your shoes are suited for the type of terrain. But this is a game changer, because when you have a blister like that, it's either you're done or you're miserable. And he was miserable, and then he finished his 100 kilometers. So it's a tale to all of us.
Yeah, that looks like a really big blister.
Yeah, big. Okay, next. This is typical in the along the way. It's an outdoor grave that is raised, and you'll often see them stacked. So unlike, Eastern Canada and across Canada where they're buried, this is above ground and typically stacked one upon each other. Next. Just the lovely flowers. People are really proud of their property, and a lot of gorgeous flowers that you wouldn't necessarily see here. There was a lot of wild watercress growing. There was a lot of wild figs, fig trees, lemon trees, a lot of beautiful vegetation. Next. Just one of the many sites. You'll often go through farmland, go right through somebody's own farm. Lots of chickens and pigs, and you really have to watch where you step. It can also have its own kind of hazards as well as farm dogs. So there was one day I was hiking along and I was by myself, and there were about 3 farm dogs, fairly feral, and anyway, the owner came out and was able to get control of them. Next. This is a lovely area, and it was one of the hottest days that I trekked along. It's one of the albergues that I stayed, and it was next door to a church. So the albergues and the B&Bs and the inns along the way are very different. Price point is very different, but all very unique. Next.
Okay.
Just one of the many beautiful sunrises. So I would get up every morning at 5 o'clock, 4:45. And if you were staying in a big hostel where at one point there were about 212 pilgrims, you wouldn't be able to sleep in, because everybody's getting ready for the day and they're hustling about. And so that was a typical morning exit onto the trail. Next. This is one of these hostels, and you see the back and the backside of a man by the name of Jean-Marie Tournier, who is from close to the Swiss border, and met him and many others along the way, and they're very close sleeping accommodations, very, very cheap, probably cost about €7 to stay there for the night. But there was clean bed, no bed bugs, lovely showers, and I believe that's the one that had about 212 people in beds in the albergue, or the hostel. Next. Just one of the many beautiful, again, ornate churches, and this is really that gilt and the deep burgundy colors, which is very typical along the way from church to church. Markers again. So you have to always be mindful of the Scallop Shell. It is really well marked. There are a couple of times that I got lost. One time I was following the scallops, and then the road came to a fork, or the little path came to a fork, and there was a yellow spray painted arrow going to the right. So I followed that, and it led me to a farm, and it was an ingenious way for the farmer to try to get pilgrims to go and stay at his place. So when he realized that I didn't want to stay at his place, he was very kind to be able to direct me. He had a little quad, and he got me back to the proper path. Okay, next. This is one of the many immigrants that are working, and that is believe the winery, the vineyard, and very happy to have that work, and always ready for a photo shoot. Next. There's always somebody telling you where to go. So they're standing and sitting strategically at corners that might be a little bit difficult to navigate, but you just follow the signs. Next. This is a cross, it's Crucifero, it's called, and it's a very tall cross, and it sits on a mound of rocks. It's really hard to appreciate it in that picture. I think I have another one coming up. And again, you carry a rock with you that symbols something heavy that you're carrying in your heart, and then you put it on the mound of rocks, and it's to release whatever's heavy in your heart. Next. That is one of the bridge crossings into a beautiful place by the name of Burgos, and it has a very famous cathedral, the Burgos Cathedral. So this day that I walked there, I was walking with used to be in the German army, and he's now an engineer in Hamburg, Germany. And we walked, I believe, about 35 kilometers that day. The sun came out, but prior to that, it was pouring rain. And when it rains in the Galicia area, region, it pours. So you need to have good rain gear with you. Next. Again, just a beautiful altar, one of many that you will see along the way. Next. And there's the shell. They are everywhere. Sometimes they're a little bit elusive, so you have to watch, but 95% of the time, they're fairly noticeable, but at times they can be on the ground, which this one was. And so you have to look down and look around, and just be cognizant. Next. This, I had injured, Thomas said I had run a number of Boston marathons. I ran in the 2013 marathon, and I was close to the bombs, and I blew C6, C7 disc in my neck. And when I was hiking the Camino, I had that big 50-liter backpack on with all of my stuff for 3.5 months. It really strained my neck, and I felt my neck, the disc starting to irritate again. So what I did was I sent my bag through Jacotrans, and it was only like a €5, and it was the best thing I could have ever done. And it's really well organized. They're honest. It's efficient. And I just carried a little day pack, and I gave my body a break. Next. Good. Next. So this is just kind of whimsical, you know, you see these little notes and messages everywhere. So there's life, love, and happiness, I believe the bottom one says. And it's just people are, you know, so good cheer and really feeling the magic that is the Camino. Next. This is in Leon, and Leon is an absolute beautiful city. It was so beautiful. I spent 3 days there and met a number of people along the way from the beginning, and we all kind of ended up in Leon at different times, but we're together for some of that 3 days. But I was 3 days there, and it's a very dynamic, beautiful city, and that's the cathedral at night behind me. It's absolutely stunning. Next. That is another example shot of the cathedral during the day in Leon. Next. And this is a familiar site as well. This is in Leon, and it's a pilgrim. So there's pilgrim statues or figurines throughout. And as I said earlier, that's what you refer to as a pilgrim. Next. Just one of the many, this is shots along that river. There were fig trees on the trail side, beautiful fresh figs that you could just pluck off the tree. Lovely. Next. So again, those whimsical little messages that are along the way. And I particularly like that, you know, that quote, it resonated with me. Next. Again, you know, that would have been sunset and the cross in the distance, which I thought was stunning. Next. This is Astorga, which is a beautiful little village, and I stayed there for one night. I got in late. That was a long, long day, and there is, you know, that's a typical market that you would see in most of the little villages and towns, or the larger ones that you come across. But it was beautiful. Next. This was kind of the unexpected things along the Camino. One of the most amazing things about the Camino is the unexpected treasures along the way. And at that night, there was a mass in Latin, and there was a Gregorian chant and a benediction led by 2 Benedictine monks. And they started the mass by asking if there was anybody who spoke French, Italian, English, and I raised my hand, and I was called to the front of the church and to deliver a prayer in English. Somebody else delivered it in Italian, somebody else in French. It was really beautiful. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Just a holy place, you know, with the beautiful candles and the chanting in the background. It was very magical and wondrous. Next. Again, that would have been a sunrise and another long day ahead. Next. And there's the Crucifero, the kind of the most famous rock mound, and with the big cross. You can see the little cross at the top. And so there's a little bit of a climb to get to the top of that. And interestingly enough, I had met a woman from Newfoundland and a woman from Nova Scotia right around this time. And we traveled together a little bit for a few days and then separated because of, our cadence. But the woman from Newfoundland and her daughter are coming to PEI in September, and she's reached out to me, and they're doing the trail, the biking, the Confederation
Trail.
tip to tip. So I'm going to help her out with. So you really make lifelong friends when you walk the Camino, and especially when you're alone, and I did it alone, that you're more open to the kindness of others, you're more open to reaching out, and vice versa. And she was just one of the many. Okay, next. Again, I mean, you get a sense of how many churches, so you can just go in at any time and say a prayer. And so every day that I walked the Camino, I had an intention, a prayer in my mind of somebody that I wanted to remember or to bless. It might have been somebody who was ill with cancer, for example, or somebody who was struggling with something else. So the churches were really beautiful in the sense that it gave you the chance just to rest your feet and fill your heart. Next. Again, this was quite a place. We weren't there very long because we found out we had bed bugs. And this is a group of people I met, and I still to this day, 7 years later, I've been to many of their homes, and we've gone on other trails together in Scotland. So you need to, we had to pack up because we found bed bugs, and you need to be really mindful of them. Most places are okay, and it's not an indication of the cleanliness or not of the caregivers. Oftentimes it's people dragging bed bugs with them and infecting a place. And the owner here is very, very apologetic and understood why we had to leave. Okay, next. This is the Camino Doro, and Wendy, who is an opera singer from The Hague, and Eva, who is a scuba diver, and she left her home in Germany in the Lake of Constance. She walked out of her door, and she walked from Germany, and she just continued to walk, and we met on the Camino. And so the two of them and I walked the Camino Doro, and we walked it at night, and you see the beautiful lights, and it's really hilly, and it's tough, and they call it the hard way. So we thought, throw that in just for some giggles. All right, next. And there's Wendy. As I said, she's an opera singer, and she lives in The Hague. And I've had the great honor to visit her a couple of years ago, and we've hiked in Scotland since. She's a lovely, lovely woman. And so we're getting to the top of the Camino Doro. Next. Again, the obstacle is the way. So all these really thoughtful quotes, and that was on the Camino Doro. Next. Now, this sweet old man, he was sitting on the corner, and again, there's always somebody telling you where to go. And so he's sitting there with his arrow. You can't get lost. You can get lost, but you won't be lost for long because they're extremely, extremely helpful. And people there want the Camino to have a good reputation because it really does a lot for the economy. So even for myself, I'm a small woman walking alone. There's one time I felt nervous, but other than that, I felt very, very comfortable. Next. So this is a group, and you see Wendy is there, and Eva, and you see Thomas from Denmark. There's a David from Arkansas, and David biked the Camino, if you can imagine. He started in Ireland with his bike, and then he got to flew to France, and he biked the Camino. So incredible. And there's a Canadian back there, Leela, from BC, so, and Eva. So these are kind of the group that I spend a lot of time with. It's a gorgeous restaurant, like a catacomb almost. Next. This lady stands at her, when I mentioned before that you'll often walk right through a farmland, farm property, the farmhouse, she makes a lot of her money by standing there, and she does it all the time. Everybody who walks the Camino from year to year recognizes her, and it is like a crepe that she's selling. So you give her, you know, €5, whatever you have, and she's making a little bit of side hustling on the side. Next.
Okay.
Again, another beautiful church. Okay, next. Just more of the gorgeous countryside, absolutely stunning. Next. And this man, it was an extremely hot day. So and even though I started it September the 29th, and I went to the end of October, but I took 6 days break, 3 in Leon and 3 in at the church at the end. I was walking along, and he knew I was really suffering, and so he took his hat off his head and he gave it to me, you know, and he was a farmer out in his fields, and obviously I couldn't keep his hat, but that's how generous and sweet they are. They really are lovely. Okay, next. And this is a sign that I'm getting close to the Camino, or sorry, to the church, to Santiago. And I had a habit of calling it Santiago. So if you say Santiago, they are thinking California. So they're like, what, Kim, where? So Santiago. Yeah, lots of signs. Follow the signs. Next. And this is when I arrived at Santiago, and I was able to get my certificate that I had completed the way. Okay, next. And that's just a one that you want to have framed and hanging or in a photo album. Next. And this is the church there. So it is the Cathedral of Santiago de Compostela, and it is where the remains of St. James are said to be located. And there it is just an absolutely magnificent church. And they have and I'm going to pronounce it improperly, but it's the Botto Fumario, and it's the world's largest incense burner. And it takes 8 men, and they're dressed in red robes. And I have a little video of it, and they're pulling on these ropes, and it goes right up to the ceiling. It swings back and forth. And if you've ever seen the movie The Way, it is exactly like that. And I was very fortunate, because when I was in the town for the 3 days, I saw it twice, and the second time was because it was a religious a day that I just lucked out, but it was amazing. Next. So this is people starting part ways for people going back to their homes, and again, many of the people that I met and became good friends with. Next. All right. So what I did as a treat, when you watch the movie The Way, the Parador Hotel is like the absolute. So what I did was I rented a room for myself and for 5 of the others. I said, I will cover this. Let's do this, because we have to, because of the movie. So we stayed a night at the Parador, and it was absolutely everything that you could imagine it to be. So that's the outside of it.
Yep.
Next. Okay, and that looks like it's more church. Yeah, next. And that's an outdoor shot of the Parador Hotel as well. Next. And that would be kind of one of the areas outside of it. Yeah, next. And what you would find along, if you're a bit of a foodie, which I am, there are some Michelin star restaurants, and this was a 4-star Michelin restaurant. So we treated ourselves to an absolutely dynamite meal, and never had food so good in my life. Next. Ah, look at that. Oh my gosh. Yeah, next. All right, so that's more of the church. Next is stunning. And that's in the church. Next. So most people, all the group that I was with, departed when they got to the church. They stayed a day, maybe 2, and then they left. I wanted to go to Finistere, which is at the this map will show you, goes right to the end. So Finistere at the time of the divide was supposedly attached to Nova Scotia. So I wanted to see, it's right on the Atlantic coast, and I wanted to see, at the time of the continental divide, I wanted to see it. So I walked, it was about another 100 kilometers from Santiago. So it was about 880 kilometers all told that I walked. I did get lost that last 100 kilometers. I actually added more on because it's not marked as much and not as many people hike it. But you can take a bus from Santiago to Finistere, but I wanted to walk. I didn't feel like I was done yet. And I'll tell you why I wanted to walk it as well. As Gerard, the guy with the blister on his foot, he had carried, his sister had died, and he had carried a clothespin because she loved hanging clothes out on the line. And when he left the Camino, he gave me the clothespin and he said, Kim, I want to give this to you. Can you carry it right to the Atlantic Ocean? Because there's this big, beautiful cross. And can you put Pat's peg on the cross? So I said, I certainly would. So that was another reason I wanted to go. It was precious cargo. And I have gone and visited Gerard a couple of times in Ireland, and he's a very good friend. So it is a beautiful area. You'll find when you're getting to the Atlantic Ocean, the air gets lighter, you can smell the salt water, and there's more play in the people. Their eyes are lighter, they're more comedic, and you see that Irish influence. Next. And that would just kind of break down the distances there. Okay, next. And that again is very typical site that you would see along the Camino. And this is in Finistere. Okay, next. Just beautiful walking along, heading towards Finistere. And there's that was a rainy day. So I'm with 2 other women that I met, and we're drying our feet. It was one of the coldest places we had stayed. It was rainy, it was damp. There was supposed to be a fire in this little auberge, but there wasn't. And we were soaked to the skin. Next. And so we try to improvise and MacGyver it by putting some plastic bags on our boots to keep them dry, but it didn't last very long. Next. And there you see the mist of the Atlantic Ocean. And I tell you, my heart just pounded when I saw it, and it really felt like home. Next. And that's Eva. She's the young woman that left her house in Germany, in the Lake of Constance, and she just she's about 6 months pregnant now. And this is a friend of mine, Heinz, who's from Austria, And I met Heinz at the beginning of the trek to the Finistere. He was a retired RCM or a retired police officer, and I actually visited him in his home in St. Stephan in Austria in 2016, and he arranged with two other friends a bike trip. So we biked the entire length of Austria to the Slovenia border. And I just found out that he passed in February. He died. Yeah. So that's yeah, he would have, yeah. So he would have, I sent him that, he'd have that photo. But yeah, beautiful. Okay, next. Okay, and that's me. And thinking, where am I going to go next? I'm going to Greece to run the marathon in Athens. That's where I'm going. But there, you can't see it, is where this big impressive cross is. And that's where I put Pat's peg so that she would be looking across the Atlantic Ocean. Yeah. Next. Yeah, I like that. Trade your expectation for appreciation and the world changes instantly. There's nobody that I met on the Camino that didn't find it an unbelievable experience. The connections you make, I made, and many made with people will forever be, part of me, and just the beauty of the place and the ability to step out of your world as you know it, step out of your life as you know it, and just walk as far or as little as you want, and to sit and to have the ability to pray, to have the ability to play. If you wanted to drink some of that Spanish wine and eat some of that delicious food, it was just an absolutely beautiful experience for me. And when I started, I was terrified because I was in Spain in A Coruña, and then I took a bus to Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port, and I had nothing booked. I just had my backpack, and I didn't know how I was going to get along, didn't know anybody. And the Camino just opened itself to me. And I would do it again, but I'm afraid that if I did it again, my expectations might be high. And I don't think I could ever duplicate my time there in 2014. Okay.
I got a few questions for you.
Sure.
So you mentioned that it was around 800 and some odd kilometers.
Mm-hmm.
And how many days did it take you to do this?
It took me, so it was 880 for myself. It's about 600 miles. And it took me about 24 days to complete that. So I was going at a fairly good clip, and there were days that I did 50. The last day heading into Santiago, I did 50 kilometers with a guy by the name of Ludwig, who left Austria. He walked from Austria and did the Camino. And so 50 kilometer days. Other days would be 35.
So the average person, would they kind of look at, say, 20 some kilometers a day?
Yeah, the average person, I would say maybe 22, 25 kilometers. And the beautiful thing is that there's all kinds of places to duck in. If you're having a bad day, if you're sore, if you feel like you need a break, there's the ability to duck in somewhere and to rest up and head out fresh in the morning.
Okay.
And I tell you, the Pyrenees when you're crossing the Pyrenees, that's probably one of the hilliest areas, but you get it done early at the onset.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So I know that you're physically and mentally tough. Would you consider beyond the physical part of doing 880 kilometers, how important is the mental part of preparing for this type of an experience?
Yeah. I think with the mental part, for me, anytime I'm doing something that's taxing me mentally, I always think to myself, is my desire to do this greater than my fear of it? So while I left that hotel and my heart was pounding and I just took a big breath and I took a first step, I kept saying, thinking to myself, is my desire to do this greater than my fear? And it was. So I all through my life, I always ask myself that. And you will be those days when you're feeling a little bit kind of, you know, maybe a bit nervous or fearful or whatever. There's always somebody that you can chat with, who you can walk with for a little bit, or you can duck into a church and have a little prayer and just kind of fill your soul again. Ways to take care of yourself. Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
Mhm.
I wanted to ask this question because you're probably you're probably the exception to the rule, but did you have any blisters?
I didn't have any blisters.
Wow.
I didn't. Yeah, I didn't. I wore oboes, these little boots made in Vietnam, and I got them at a sports store actually in the States, OBOZ. And they were a little high, up around my ankles. And the thing with blisters is I lost toenails. I lost 4 toenails. So my feet weren't a pretty sight, but I didn't have any blisters. And anytime I started feeling a hot spot, I would take my boots, change my socks, and if there was a creek or something, I would soak my feet in it and just cool down the inflammation in my feet, or take a water bottle and pour it over your feet. Some of the places, some of the little the cafes, they actually had ice, and you could put your feet in ice to cool them down. But you really, your trek starts from the feet up.
Yep.
And you need to, keep your toenails trim, your feet in good condition.
Yeah. Now there's a couple of interesting stories that I saw on YouTube with people doing the Camino.
Yeah.
One guy started off with a pair of hiking boots and then ended up getting more like a pair of hiking shoes. And
Yeah.
he found that the hiking shoes worked better than the boots.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think it's just, I know it's, now would you say that the Camino is a lot of road?
The Camino is, there's one section that is a lot of road, and it was around the Astorga area.
Mhm.
And there was a lot of, like, I was walking on the highway, and I think that's when I was nervous, because I thought there's cars going by. And if somebody decided, they see a single woman walking, and you're right on the highway, they could pull over, grab my backpack. Everything I had in it was was everything I had. And so that section, there was a lot of walking on the highway, and it wasn't pleasant. And coming into Burgos, it was pouring rain, and I got kind of discombobulated, and I ended up taking the long way, and it was a lot of concrete as well. But most of the area is beautiful pathways and like going through the woods, and there are Roman gypsies that stay in the woods. And what they do is they try to sell you their wares. And so I bought a beautiful, you can't see it, I have it on right now, but it's a beautiful scallop shell carved out of wood, out of a very beautiful wood. So they're in the woods and they're selling their wares. But a lot of times it's along the creek. It's a real mix of paths.
Okay. Yeah, because I found that when I was hiking in UK and I had to go on the road, I found it was harder on my feet walking on concrete or asphalt. And once I got back into the paths and the trail, it seemed like so much easier.
Yes.
Yeah.
And especially like when it's raining too, because your feet start to get damp.
Yep.
And then you're getting that moisture, which will cause friction and cause a blister. So you really have to be careful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, on behalf of the Hike to Highlands Festival Society, we'd like to thank you for sharing your story today with us, and hope that many people will look at this and think seriously about maybe taking this challenge on. Probably afterwards, I'll ask you, I'll maybe get you to send me some stuff, because I can put this on the YouTube video at the end to say, here are some links that you should be looking at when you're planning your trip.
Excellent. Yes,
Yeah,
I'd be.
So thanks again on behalf of Hike to Highlands Festival Society, and hopefully someday I may see you on one of your travels next.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure you will, Tom. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Kim.
Thank you.